I came on the job in 1986 with the 67th RTT. We started in July and we graduated in December of 86, and was on the job for 30 years, almost exactly. Retired around August 2016. During that time I was stationed at Athol C1. That was my first barracks, and at the time I was living in Belmont. And the ride was like 60-something miles, so it was a pretty good ride. And I thought, okay, before long I'll be back in Concord or something like that. But it turns out that I moved out that way, and I was probably, all told, at Athol for about 20 years in between other assignments. I spent a very short period of time at the Quabbin when I was promoted to sergeant. I did a couple of stints at the academy teaching recruit classes, and then I would go back and forth to Athol. And then when I probably had, about 20 years or so, 21 years on the job, I was assigned to the academy at the Firearms Training Unit. I was there for 6 years. And after that, duty officer in Holden, and then right back to Athol as a station commander, right where I started. And that's where I retired. I can remember a few troopers being in the town of city of Waltham, where I grew up. Just they were different. And I guess I didn't really think too much about being a trooper until I was much older. I took the municipal exam, and the state police exam was almost, on a lark. Like, I don't think I could ever, be on the state police, but it turns out, I guess I did. Well, I was a Marine, and I was in the Marine Reserves at the time that the job called, and I was on out in 29 Palms, and so this would be 86, and my dad passed away while I was out at 29 Palms, and I came back for the funeral, and just after the funeral I got the notice that my class was going to start, and so the rest is history, I guess. Boy, that's a question a lot of people have asked me. The Marine Corps most definitely physically, but the state police was more challenging mentally because of all the stuff that we had to learn and we had exams on. But I think that that having gone through Marine Corps boot camp, it really prepared me better for the State Police Academy. Although I will say that on day one, when we are getting introduced to our drill instructors, the first thing that came to my mind was, I've already done this. I really don't want to do this again. But I stuck with it. And, I like I said, I knew what the game was going to be, until it got to be more of an actual a schooling event rather than a boot camp. One of the very first things that I was involved in was just a year on the job, and there was a triple murder in Townsend, Mass. And they relied very heavily on the job to provide manpower to search for the guy that had done it. And then at the end of my career, I was involved in the search for the marathon bombers. And I was there the day that they arrested the surviving bomber. So in between, lots of other stuff happened. But those two things really stand out in my mind. The job changes you, and it doesn't necessarily happen overnight, but some of these things that do happen to you, I'll give you like a wake-up call that what you're doing is really different than any other job that you've had. I can recall one night I was on patrol and stopped a car for something minor, who knows, speeding, weaving, whatever. Guy was drunk, but there was just something about him that just wasn't right. And I was always a careful guy anyways, but the hackles on the back of my neck just went up, and I made sure I was standing far away from him, and I was using a very authoritative voice to, tell him what I wanted to do. And when I got to the point where I knew I was going to place him under arrest, I told him to turn around and put his hands behind his back. And he just looked at me, and the look he gave me, I knew in my heart of hearts that he was thinking about trying to kill me. There was no doubt about it in my mind. And I gave him some really loud commands. I know I moved my body in a certain way. I probably put my hand on my gun and told him in no uncertain terms, he was under arrest, put his hands behind his back, and he just sort of like sagged. And he did. I put the cuffs on real quick and got him in the cruiser, and I was waiting for a tow truck, and I was talking to him for a minute, just booking questions type of thing that I could fill out in the cruiser. And he said something to the effect of, you're pretty lucky, or something along those terms. Like, what do you mean? He said, never mind. And I knew exactly what he was talking about. And when I got him back to the barracks and we did a background check on him, found out he was on parole for murder. And so he was going back to jail. And I knew that he was trying to think about whether he could get me and he could escape. And he didn't. I got him. But that's one of those things where you realize that just something as simple as a traffic stop can go bad so fast. With that story I mentioned about the triple homicide. It was December of 1987, and I was working an evening shift. I got a phone call. It was the media looking for stories or arrests and so forth. And so now we have got nothing. He goes, what can you tell me about the triple murder? What triple murder? He goes, what? You don't know? No. Well, the murder had occurred the day before. I didn't live in the area, so it wasn't something I heard about. And so the reporter told me about this horrific murder. A woman and her 2 young children were murdered in Townsend. And as soon as we hung up on the phone, I immediately called the Leominster Barracks to find out what the story was down there, because Townsend's in Leominster's area. And so I got the information, but nobody thought the kid was still in the area. He was only like 18 years old. So I drove home and didn't think too much of it. And the rumor was that he had relatives in Virginia, I believe, and so that's probably where he took off to. On the way in for the evening shift the next day, got a call on the radio to head to Townsend Center. Okay, it's probably something related to what was going on there the day before. I had no idea what the story was, but I didn't even know where Townsend was. I'd never been there before. I had to stop on the side of the road and look at a map and find out, where Townsend was. So I drove up to Townsend, and I didn't know where the PD was, which is where they told me to go. And so I just pulled over in the center of town, once again, got my map book out, and looking around, and up beside me pulls an unmarked cruiser. It happened to be one of my former drill instructors, Sergeant Mike Saltzman. And he says, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm trying to figure out where the PD is." And he just, okay, new guy doesn't know anything. And so he says, "Okay, follow me." So we start heading to the PD, and then we get sent to another address where this person had just been seen, just broke into a house. So we head there, and I didn't know that the kid wasn't in Virginia. What had happened was they were chasing him all night with a canine. So he was just going from point to point, trying to find him. And we get to this neighborhood, and there must have been about 25 cruisers. And supposedly had broken into one of the houses. We were gearing up to start searching the woods. And then, nope, he's not here. We just saw him over here. So now all these cruisers on the side street are trying to get in and out, get around each other. I almost crashed into Saltzman's car. He was, And now his opinion of me has gone from here to even lower. And so we get down to where we're going to go, and now we've lost him. So now we're all sort of trying to figure out where we're going to go. It was almost like the Keystone Cops at this point. And then we get the word he was seen in air. He had stolen a vehicle. It was a Volkswagen minibus. So that would stand out. So, and he was seen in air. It was only like about 5 miles further down the road. And so we're all heading down to Air Center in this line of just blue lights and sirens. I was so proud to be part of the state police. I was part of something big with this whole line of cars careening down the road to get to Air Center. And when we got there, we didn't know where we were supposed to go, where he had been seen. And so we all gathered at the school. And then while we were there was another sighting. He's at this location. So we all start to gear up. And the guy in charge was Lieutenant Joe Michelizzi, who was, I believe, the C4, the Leominster commander at the time. And he grabs Saltzman and he says, "Make somebody my radio person." And Saltzman turns and sees me. And he says, "You." Oh, I was just deflated. I wanted to be there when we got this guy, because honestly, everybody there, if they had a shot at this kid, they would have taken him out right away, because the murder was just so horrific. He raped and murdered this poor woman in her home, and then he drowned both of her children. So everybody just wanted a piece of this kid. And so now I'm just sitting there while everybody races off to this new location, and finally they say, "Okay, you can come down to where we are." And I get there, and I felt like a little kid at the parade where everybody is standing in front of me, and I couldn't see anything because I had to stay by the radio. At the time, we didn't have portables. I had to stay in the cruiser with the radio. We had 2 helicopters up. They had spotlights on the house. There was like a row of people that were watching what the guys were doing, and in front of those people were the guys. They had a perimeter set up. Everybody had their guns out. They were pointing at the house that he supposedly had broken into. And I'm stuck in the car. I can't even stand up and watch because the code for the radio will only go so far. And I'm just miserable because I'm missing everything. And I look over and I see a registry officer running down the road toward me. And he was an older guy. He was a little bit out of shape. And he had a big overcoat on, and it was open. And so when he was running, it was just flapping in the breeze. It was almost comical. And in the back of my mind, I remembered somebody telling me when we were getting little bits of information that the sighting in air came from a registry cop. And I'm like, it's got to be him. And he got up to my car because everybody else was in front of this big crowd of people. He couldn't get to them anyways. And I was the only one that was identifiable. And he gets to me, and he's completely out of breath. He can't even get 2 words together without sucking some more air in. And he's like, "The kid, I chased him down the road. He's at the lumberyard." And as soon as he gets that bit of information out, I couldn't remember Michelizzi's cruiser number. Not that he would even be near his cruiser. So I made the command decision. I get on the air to the helicopter. And I said, 796 was my number. 796 to the helicopter. He's in the lumberyard, about a half a mile in front of you. Head over that way. And sure as heck, they all start going down there. But of course, stay here with the car. And I said, now the car that he had stolen is there. Oh, now I can't even go. And they found him within probably like 15 or 20 minutes. And, hooray for us. And then I was tasked with following the car that he'd stolen on the wrecker back to the barracks. So, happy ending. I actually was part of the arrest in some way, being stuck as the radio guy. So later on that night, Now, this is probably only like 6 o'clock. It was December, it was dark already, so it was only about 6 o'clock. We got our supper at the barracks, and I was sent down to a bar in Athol that was one of the local dive bars where all the bums used to hang out. We were looking for somebody. So we walk into the place, and it was almost like it was on cue. We walk in, and the jukebox just like ends. The song on the jukebox ends, and everybody just turns their heads at us. The two troopers walking in the door. And we know we're not going to get anything unless we can see the guy. You know, we're looking for Joe Blow, and nobody's like, no, don't know him, never saw him, he ain't here. And somebody says, hey, did you catch that guy in Townsend? And I said, yeah, we got him a few hours ago. He's under arrest. And they all started to cheer. They hated us 2 minutes ago. And now because we got this guy, now we're good guys. Somebody patted me on the back and said, good job. And I was like, holy cow, you know. Once again, what a great job. This is why I joined, the state police is to do stuff like that. I actually ran the marathon on that day, and I was having a pretty good race, and I would have crossed the finish line just about the time that the bomb actually went off, except that I was running so well, I didn't want to push myself, so I held back a little bit, and I had stopped. Somebody was on the course that I knew, and I stopped and talked for actually a couple of minutes to catch my breath before I started out. So I think that if I hadn't done that, I probably would have been right there. But anyways, about a half a mile from the finish line, there's a crowd of people where all of us are stopped, and we're hearing, there was an explosion. What was it? Some type of generator? Nobody even was thinking bomb. And then the word came down that that's what it was, and we weren't going to finish, and that's it. And so I eventually found another trooper that was running the race, and he had his car parked on the other side of the river in Cambridge, and we walked over, and that's how I got to where I was going to go, since I couldn't get to the finish line. But the next day, I had planned on taking off, but nope, we need to have you in Boston at 07. And so we got there. We all gathered at the barracks, the old I think there was the Lower Basin MDC barracks, and I don't know what they had planned for us, but they canceled those plans. So every day we were told, stand by. You might be back in Boston. And at this time, I was a lieutenant. I was the station commander at Athol. So the week went on as normal as it could be, I guess. But on the night where Officer Sean Collura was killed, that's when the pursuit of the remaining bomber started, the big shootout in Watertown. And I was working the day shift, and around noontime the next day, I was told, head into Watertown. And I had grown up in Waltham, so I knew exactly where Watertown was. I had worked at the Arsenal Mall, which is where the command center, the command post was. So I knew going into it, where it was. And it was the most eerie thing. I was driving through Watertown, which is generally a very busy place for traffic, and there was nothing, no traffic, no pedestrians, because they had told everybody to shelter in place. Even I saw what looked like a tumbleweed go across an empty road. It was just so surreal. And when I got to the Arsenal Mall, it was just filled with cops of every description, every department, whether they were asked to be there or not, they were there. And I found a couple of people that I knew, and we were just like, what do we do? Nobody knew. It was like controlled chaos. And then I found my division commander, and she told me, grab this other guy and just drive around in your unmarked car and just see what you can see. The stop team was out there. They were searching houses individually. Now, I still didn't know exactly where the shootout was or where they thought he might be, but this other lieutenant and I, Richard Chase, he was the station. No, actually, he was the shift commander at at Holden at the time. He was in the duty office at Holden. So he had told me he was there the night before, and he was actually at the tail end of the shootout in Watertown. So he was filling me in on what was going on. And we drove around for a couple hours, and obviously we didn't see anything. So we went back to the command post, and they were just about ready to shut it down. And on the radio, the helicopter starts broadcasting that they're looking at a boat, and the infrared is showing that there's somebody on the boat. And I'm thinking it's the Charles River, because the Charles River runs right by there, and there's a couple of boat clubs, and I'm thinking that's where it is. Well, it was really the infamous boat that was in the guy's backyard, and we were only a stone's throw from there when I found out exactly where it was. So I'm like, that's where I'm going, and a couple of other people had the same, let's go. And when I got there, it was the same thing. Cruisers everywhere. We just parked helter-skelter all over the street, and everybody is getting out. I had a shotgun at the time, so I had my shotgun out, and we started working our way toward the neighborhood where everybody was gathering. And the neighborhood was adjacent to a very small office park, and we had to go through the parking lot of the office park to get to the backyard of the house where the boat was. And I get out into the parking lot, and there's a big parking lot, maybe about 100 yards long, and there was a retention wall that went in, and I noticed all these people taking cover behind the wall, because the big shootout had already, the second shootout, I guess, had already started, where everybody started to shoot at the boat. And somebody started yelling, take cover, that he's shooting. And nobody knew who exactly was shooting. So I got behind cover. I had other people behind cover. Now, of course, I'm a lieutenant, so I have to be in charge, and I made sure everybody was behind cover. So I was behind the corner of a building, and a couple more shots rang out in the distance. Like, oh, this is the real deal again. And I look behind me, and there's a bunch of people behind me. They're all looking, and had to get, it was the news media, most of them, and get them out of it. Of course, they wanted to capture, but a stray round could easily take anybody out. It really wasn't all that far away. And so I was just basically, keeping everybody from getting in the way and getting hurt. And I could listen to the broadcasts from the yard. The stop team was there. They were making an approach with the Bearcat on the boat, and I could hear the stop team commander at the time. It was Sergeant Mike Domnoski. He's got a very, very distinct, very deep voice, very commanding voice, and he was giving the CP like a blow-by-blow of what was going on. And then another group of officers, uninvited group of officers, came in and decided they were going to make the arrest. And I remember hearing Domnoski say, "Who's that group? Tell them to stop." Never mind. They had already moved in, and they grabbed the kid and put handcuffs on him and so forth. And so after that, we all wanted to see what was going on. We all just went over to the scene, and it was just pandemonium at the scene. But then we got the word, okay, everybody has to come back to the command post to check in. And as we were driving back to the command post, now it's bumper to bumper cruisers, all trying to get out of there. And I had that same feeling that I had in Townsend, almost 27 years earlier. I was part of something, bigger that was important. And people were cheering and clapping us as we drove down the road past them. So it was really, something that I'll never forget. Even though I had only a very, very small role in it, it was something that I was a part of. And obviously I still remember it, but like I said, it was just really cool to be part of it.